let's take a look at some visual display advanced features that we can use here in Revit. And before we do, if we're using the original model that we've been working with, we're going to need to add a few more things to it. You can use whatever file you'd like to use to create this rendering. So a couple of things come to mind. First, in the level 1 view, we didn't place a floor. So the first thing I'm going to do is to hide some of these graphics that we don't need, like the tags, the door tags, if you have any showing. And then here we need a floor. So on the first floor, if you don't have one, first level, we're going to go to the floor tool, and then you can here pick the walls to create a floor. And if you see any gaps here, you don't want to have a doubling up of this sketch. So we'll use in the modify panel this trim extend to select these two magenta lines and create a closed shape for our floor. Okay, so we've got our floor. We might want to change the type, so we'll go to edit type and duplicate it so that we can have a different floor on the first floor or second floor. So we'll pick duplicate, and we could call this wood floor. And then under structure, under edit, we can pick by category the material, and in the material browser you can scroll down to W's, look for wood flooring, and pick OK. And now pick OK, because your material is going to be wood for that one. You can see the lines on it. So then we can go to level 2, and we know that we have a floor here because we've established it. So we can use our tab key to select that floor and change, if you'd like, the type, edit type. Maybe we can duplicate this one and call this carpet. And then under the structure edit, I know that we should actually just add a finish to it, because right now we're changing the structure of it. So technically we should insert a layer and move it up and change the function to finish, and then change the material category to carpet, which then does need to have a thickness. So I'll use something like an 1/8 inch and pick OK. Okay, so we've got a carpet, we've got floor on the first floor that's wood, carpet on the second floor. Let's go to level 1 and then use underlay over here in properties to see here level 2. By changing the underlay to level 1 and picking apply, we can see the floor above and place a stair. For our rendering, we can just go ahead. We'll be coming back to working with stairs in a more advanced way, but we'll go ahead and just place a stair by component and pick a point here, pull your mouse straight down and click, and then pick the green check mark so that we can select our stair and move it. I'll just move it into this corner here. You can feel free to design something that's a little bit more elaborate if you like. So now that I have the stair, I can go to the second level and go to railing and sketch a path. And in the draw panel, I can use pick lines to pick around here the extent of the sketch for the railing. I know that I don't need a railing over here on this side, so I'll select that line, kind of use this little grip at the end to back it up over here away from the opening, and then pick the green check mark. So now we can go to the View tab and create a section that will look into that stair, double click on the section head, and here we have a stair with an opening and a rail around it. And the reason that we did that was so that we can create a camera view and a rendering and look at the different options for rendering. So while we're here in the section, I'd like to show you how to bring in some photos. They're called decals. You can go to the Insert tab, and here it is, decal. So before we place one, we can establish some of our images. So you can decide on 2 or 3 different images that you might want to bring in, maybe paintings or photos. So you can go to Decal Types under Insert, and then at the bottom left corner you can pick Create New Decal, and then call it something, maybe just Image 1 or whatever the image is that you're bringing in. You can go ahead and pick OK, and then at the top right you can click on this icon with the 3 little dots, and then go get your image that you're going to use, whether it's a building or a photograph or your favorite pet. So at the bottom left corner, pick Create Decal again and type in Image 2, and then go here to the source icon and bring that image in, and we'll rotate that once we place it. We can go ahead and create another image here. So create as many as you'd like for your rendering, and then pick OK. Now notice that you can change the brightness and the reflectivity and the transparency. Let's go ahead and pick OK. And now I have decal. I can place the decal. Once I place it here, the one that was current, or the one that I had highlighted, will be the one that I can place. Image 3. You can see that you can change the width and the height here in the status bar, but you can also change here the visual display at the bottom left corner to realistic, so that you can see your image. When you click on it, you have these little blue grips you can use to make the image bigger, and you can use rotate in the modify panel to rotate your image the direction that you'd like it to be placed in. When you pick place decal, you can change here in the type selector the different images that you're going to place. So maybe this one I'd like to put down here, and at the same time I can go ahead and grab my third image and put it someplace up here. It's up to you in the design of it. So rotating it, you can use the rotate. You can use little grips to kind of make the image bigger or smaller if you'd like, and go ahead and design your own. Okay, so then what we're looking to do is to create several 3D views. So I can go over to 3D in our 3D view, and we're going to right click and pick Duplicate View and Duplicate. And now for that new one, we can double click on Copy of 3D, type in VG, so that you can go to Annotation Categories and put a check mark in front of section box, so that we can get our section box here. We did have a check mark in Properties, but it was turned off in the visual displays. And we can use these small little blue grips to crop the view with the desired look that we'd like for our graphics. So what I'm thinking is that I'm going to hold my shift key down and press the wheel of my mouse to orbit over to the other side, and maybe create here a section that is only showing visually a piece of this building, maybe not even the roof. We're going to need to create a building pad, because we have a floor, but that floor is kind of in the dirt there. So you can see the variation in the flooring material. So let's go to the site view, and then we'll type in VG and turn off our roof. I'll take the check mark out of roof so that we can go to the massing and site tab and pick building pad. The building pad becomes either the slab on grade or the basement floor if you'd like to create a basement, and we haven't taken a look yet at foundations and the section about walls that we will be coming to. So for this one, there's an option to pick walls. So I'm going to go ahead and pick here these walls. It'll pick the outside line of it, and just like when we created floors, there's this little gap here, so I can use the trim and extend to select these two sketched magenta lines. And the height of the offset from the level will be a negative maybe 8 feet. If we decide to have a basement later on, we can always come back and change this. I'll go ahead and pick apply, and then pick the green check mark. Now if we go back to our copy of the 3D view that we haven't renamed yet, you can see that it kind of cut the ground, and it went all the way down to the basement level. And so let's rename this one. We'll rename this view Graphic Display Options. Click OK. And in this one, let's set up our section box so that we kind of like the view that it's showing. Add more furniture. Maybe I'll go over to the level 1. And if I hold my control key down, I can select all 3 of these pieces and move them to the other side, because maybe that's more desirable in the rendering. And also possibly rotate them. Yours will be different. You might decide to rotate it or not, or so that it's rotated all the way around. I can see it a little bit better. We also can, I think I'll move this down a little bit more. We can drag it over, or we can use the arrow keys on our keyboard to move objects once we have them selected. We can also, while we're here, go to the Insert tab and load families. If you haven't loaded these already, let's pick up some people. And so here we can go to Entourage in the US Imperial folder and hold your control key down and select female and male, and go ahead and pick open. Now they're loaded, but we'll need to here go to Architecture tab and Component, place the component. When you're placing people, if you didn't know this already, some are sitting down and some are standing. So if you pick, for instance, Cynthia, and you pick Edit Type, and then you pick here on this button, Cynthia, you'll be able to see that she is actually a person that's going to be sitting on a chair. So I can go ahead and use Cynthia here. I can use my space bar to rotate, and the point is pointing in the direction that they're facing. So I'm going to have her, sit right there on that chair. I'll verify later on that the height is correct. So go ahead and insert other people or furniture if you'd like. Alex here, he might maybe be standing next to her here by the table. And also over in this area where we're going to be creating a camera, we can start to establish people, furniture. I'm going to use maybe someone else, Tina. I don't know what she looks like, so I'm going to go take a look. She's standing also, so I can put her here. And you design, your own. I've also posted a plant that you can use, so you can download that interior plant and load it. Here it is. It's a large, potted plant that you can decide to put in different places. So in the graphics display options view, you can use the section box to create the view that you'd like to render and look at different visual displays. We'll take a look at 3 different ways of graphically displaying your information, and one is graphic display options. Let's highlight this view, right click and duplicate the view, and then highlight the new view, right click and rename it, phasing, and pick OK. And then again, right click, duplicate the view by renaming it VG Filters. So for the graphic display options, let's go to the visual displays at the bottom left corner and pick graphic display options. In this dialog box, we can, under shadows, put a check mark under cast shadows. And if you pick apply, you'll see the shadows that are cast. And if you show the ambient shadows, then you'll see that it kind of softens the edges a little more, and you'll see that there are shadows that come from the geometry. And if we change the lighting, you'll see it even more, because one of the lighting options is ambient light. So I'll make that 100% and pick apply, so that you can see here clearly with the ambient light, the shadows are cast around the geometry a little bit more, giving us a soft edge. We can intensify the shadows by using here the slide bar, or taking them out so that you can have a different look. You can also go to the background section, and instead of using none, maybe you'd like to use gradient. We'll use image later in our interior rendering, so we'll use gradient here. And if you pick apply, you'll see that these 3 colors are for the ground, the horizon, and the sky. So if we change the ground to something like black and pick apply, you'll see that it's ground and then it gets lighter and lighter. If we wanted a brighter model, we could here change the sun so that the sun is brighter on the images. And if we go under sun settings in session lighting, you can pick still instead of here one view of sunlight. If you pick still, and under location, you can click on this icon, the 3 little dots, and change the location. Boston is the default, but if you wanted to, you type in Southfield, and then you can hold your left mouse button down on that little arrow underneath this pin to bring here your location to a different spot, and pick OK. And then you can change here the date so that you have a little bit more shadows cast in kind of the later months, closer to the end of September. And maybe change your time to 1 p.m. and pick apply. And so you'll see that the shadows will change a little bit based on those sun settings. Under silhouettes, we can decide on what the edge of these drawings will look like. If we, for instance, pick wide lines and pick applied, you'll see that the edges have kind of a wide line. Or you can drop this list down and pick edit new and pick the plus sign in front of lines so that you can see all these different line styles. And then if you'd like to create a new one, you can pick here new and call it maybe bold and pick OK. And then for the bold line weight, you can use something a little bit bolder, so maybe 8 or 9, which is kind of thick. You can then here pick apply and OK, and you'll see that the lines get a little bit thicker around the edges. See, if I go too far with this and I use bold of something bigger like 10, you'll see that the line weight is a little too much for this scale. So I'll go back and change the bold line weight to 8. Even 7 would be good. Okay, so in the graphic display options, you do have choices. We can go ahead and pick OK. Also, if you type in VG and you decide to change the way that the walls look in the cutout, you can scroll down for this view, and for walls you can change under the cut patterns. You can click on override and change maybe the color to black and the pattern to solid. And when you do that and pick apply, you'll see that where the walls are cut, you'll have this kind of nice black edge that gives you more graphic displays. So we can do the same thing here if you'd like. For the floors, under cut pattern, we can change that to black or a different color if you'd like, so that you can see here, start to see here the cut out material. See the surfaces that are cut and highlight them in black. I'm changing my bold line weight to 6 to see if that helps, so that it's not so thick down here in some of the graphics. And then of course we can change our visual display to realistic if you'd like to show the people that are actually RPCs, which stands for rich photorealistic content. Okay, let's take a look now at the phasing model. So we should still have our 3D, and if we go to phasing, we have the same model, a little bit changed, but the display, the graphic display wasn't used for the ambient light and other things that you're exploring and experimenting with for your personal display of whatever you've cropped out in your design. So under phasing, we have a tool in the Manage tab called Phases under the phasing here panel, and we have here existing and new phases, and we'll use this later on when we want to graphically display the difference between existing elements and new construction. We're going to use it in a different way. We're going to create a filter so that for this view, all of the elements will have a rendered look that is kind of a white ivory matte look that looks like a model, a conceptual model. Under the phase filter tab, we're going to pick new and rename that filter abstract. And so for abstract, we're only going to use the new and existing objects. So we'll change this drop down to overridden for new and existing. And then since we're not using demolished right now, we can click on not displayed and temporary not displayed, and we'll come back and talk about what these columns are. Right now, for rendering purposes, we're creating a filter, a phase filter for this entire view. And so over in the graphic overrides tab, for the existing phase status, I can come over to the material column, and under here phase existing, I can click on the small little icon with the 3 dots, and it brings us here to the material browser. We're going to create a new material. So at the very bottom left corner, we can click on that second icon and pick create new material. This is our new material, so we can right click and rename it, and we'll rename it abstract. For the abstract material, we'll go back down to the bottom left corner and pick here open closes asset browser, which is basically the material for your rendered appearance. I'm going to do a search for ivory and find this porcelain ivory. So with the abstract here highlighted, I can double click on the porcelain ivory and see that for the abstract material, now I have an appearance of this porcelain ivory, and I'm going to change the finish on it from gloss to this flat matte, and now I can pick apply and pick OK. And so now that material for the existing is abstract, and for the new here we'll change that material also to the abstract, which we've already established as this flat matte ivory material. I'll go ahead and pick OK. I'll pick apply and pick OK. And now in the properties panel at the bottom right corner, the phase filter here can be changed to abstract. If I pick apply, the entire view is established as this abstract material, and if we change the display here to realistic, you'll see that it takes on this kind of black and white view. Now we're ready to render this view to show the rendering of that matte finish. We'll pick the teapot kettle icon down here, and under the rendering dialog box, we can change this setting here to medium. Pick render. If you want to find out how much time it takes to render, you can take the check mark out of close dialog box when rendering is complete. Okay, so some of the images, like the decals, do show up in the people, but if you were looking for a rendering of your BIM model to look like here this matte board cutout of a model, then you might want to use the phasing option with the abstract material, that porcelain ivory with the matte finish. So we can save it to our project, this rendering, by picking Save to Project, and it's already going to be saved as a rendering called phasing 1, which is great. Let's go ahead and pick OK. It's in the project browser under rendering, and we can close out of the rendering dialog box.